Hi, everybody. I am Brandon Sewell, owner of Seal Pro Painting and also now Seal Pro Seal and Wash, located in Central Florida. I'm also the host of the Off the Ladder podcast, and we exist to help home service business owners learn so that they can lead well and ultimately live life off of the ladder. Today's guest is Patrick Neve, and he is actually from my local BNI chapter here in Central Florida, Space Coast BNI. And Patrick Neve is the area manager for Decided Excellence Catholic Media, which is a print publication. And so I'm going to let Patrick introduce himself and exactly what it is that he does.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon.
Welcome to the show,
Thanks.
Patrick.
It's good to be here. So I'm from Central Florida. I grew up here. My dad was actually a sign painter for a couple decades. My grandfather before him was a sign painter for several decades before that. And so I have like roots in the area, roots in I guess you could call it print marketing or tactile marketing. And so it made sense when I was coming home to the area to take something up that was similar in that vein. I have a background in Catholic theology. I have a master's degree in theological science, which sounds a lot fancier than it is. I was a youth minister for 4 years. And so that's why that intersection kind of made sense. So helping small businesses in Florida, just like my dad did, and then working in the Catholic Church, just like I had been for 4 years prior. So that's basically. I also run a podcast called The Crunch, which is a Catholic podcast for young adults, and that's me. That's all I do. Also, wife, two
Yeah, that's
kids.
awesome,
You know
man.
that's
Well,
important too.
yeah, that's awesome. So, your second is here
Oh no, she's coming. She's down the pipe,
or on
but
the way?
she's so big that we're just counting her. Might as well. Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. I hear you. Well, that's super exciting. We have very similar, like just families and stuff. It's funny. I also have a background in ministry.
Mhm.
I was a youth director for a while for a non-denominational church, and then we both have sons who are around the same age.
Mhm.
Right? How old is your
My
son?
son's 2. You have a 3-year-old?
Uh, Ooh, no, my son's 4.
Ah,
He just turned 4 in
bummer.
April.
I was close.
So, anyway, we have little
We have
people,
little ones. Yeah.
and my daughter was just born, so she's
Congrats.
just shy of 3 months old. So boy, girl, super fun.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so it's been awesome to be a part of BNI with you. And whenever you've presented or talked about, marketing, branding, all of those things, you have a lot of wisdom when it comes to that. So I thought that it would be fitting for you to come on here and just talk about some of your expertise, if you will, and philosophies on marketing and branding. And just I think a good amount of your client base is home services,
Mhm.
correct? Like with the
Yes,
print.
specifically. Yeah, with Decided Excellence at the magazine, it's mostly home services, some financial. Those are the ones that do best in the magazine.
Yeah. So as far as print goes, I'm interested because I think when most people think of print, I even let's like even use myself as an
Mhm.
example. One of the first things that you think of is like, man, how in the world do I know if this is actually working
Yes.
or that this
Oh
is
yes.
something that is worth putting my money into? And to your point, you could have, it's funny, like you could have somebody who does this and come back to you and say like, I have people who have been doing this for years, they're return customers, they're getting results,
Mhm.
and you'll still have somebody like myself or others in home services who are just like not sure or hesitant to make the jump. So I'm just curious to hear from you. What do you see is the strategy with your marketing and branding, maybe when it pertains to print
Mhm.
and, being in a publication.
True.
And, do you advise your clients that, hey, like, are there any clients where you might say, like, hey, this isn't right for you now, but this may be part of your strategy later? Or are you like all in on it and believe that it's like a strategy whenever you're ready to make that jump? I'm just interested to hear like your perspective on that
Oh,
and maybe
most
how you
definitely.
approach it with your
Yeah,
clients.
so like one man shops. I mean, we'll put if someone really loves the magazine and wants to be in it. I think it's you get what you pay for. So if a smaller guy wants to come into the magazine, I'll say, all right, let's get you a smaller footprint and let's maximize that footprint. But honestly, sometimes with these one man shops, just odd jobs guys, it's like it's probably best, the amount of time and energy spent. I mean, think about it in terms of hours, right? Like how many hours does it take you to make $300? So taking that time and instead of putting it into the magazine, putting it into forming relationships with people at your church, doing jobs for them gratis so that they recommend you. Those kinds of things might for a smaller guy, it's like it might do them better. It might do them better because they're so small that the opportunity cost is a little higher for the magazine. For midsize and larger, it's usually a good idea to go into a magazine like this. I will say that generally, if someone's marketing is somewhat scattershot, if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I've been doing Facebook ads for 3 months, it's not working. I want to try you guys," I'll say, "Hey, hold on. You've only been doing Facebook ads for 3 months. Let's see what's over there. Like you picked this. You got to give it the college try because I don't. It's bad for them to jump into the magazine all of a sudden because they're just going to keep going from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And it's bad for me because then in 3 months I'm going to be having a conversation with them where they're like, I'm not doing it, it's not working, and then they're going to want to jump ship and go to someone else. So it's a lose lose if someone's jumping from thing to thing. So those are kind of the two people that I try to stay I try to very respectfully say, hey, maybe this is some other time. People who are a little too small to advertise, and then people who paid advertise, and then people who are kind of jumping from marketing strategy to strategy.
Yeah, that's good. The way that I kind of think about it in like my own, um, situation as a business owner is I want to try and like build a solid foundation of relationships,
Mm-hmm.
networking. Even I want to get to the point where all of my vehicles are wrapped, all of my trailers are wrapped.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I'd like to do is once I have like a really solid like foundation for the word of mouth, referrals, networking groups, getting in my community, getting my name out there, people seeing us around town working. Then now my brand, this is the way that I think about it. Well, now my brand has gotten some equity in the community,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've gotten some exposure. Some people see like, okay, Seal Pro painting trucks are everywhere. Seal Pro painting, workers, employees. I see them at the gas station, out to eat. I see their shirts. I see all this stuff. And then my next strategy would be, okay, now let's maximize on that branding and do some like um the bus stop
Yeah.
signs everywhere. Let's put some ads into some local publications. Let's, you know, whatever. Put an ad on the local train. What is it? Like
Yeah.
buses. You know, um, and then kind of like now it's more about. And I think that's branding.
Yes.
Now you're just making people aware of your brand. Maybe they're not buying from you because they saw you on that advertisement in the magazine, but they saw you in the magazine, and then they saw your truck, and then they saw your employee at Wawa getting gas
Yeah.
and getting food, and then they saw a yard sign, a door hanger, and then they're like, oh well, I need some painting done. I've
I've seen
seen
Seal
Seal
Pro
Pro
everywhere. Yeah.
painting everywhere. Now I'm going to Google Seal Pro
And
painting.
then
And
you're gonna ask
so,
them, "Where'd you hear about us?" And they're gonna
um,
say, "I googled you." Yeah.
exactly. So there's no like great way to pinpoint the exact ROI, but that's why I think that, um, like for myself, there's things that I want to accomplish first, and they're like those things that I just
Mhm.
mentioned to you. Like if I had my all of my vehicles wrapped, if we were consistently like putting out door hangers everywhere, and just getting people aware of our brand better, that's when I'm going to be like, okay, let's really double down on this effort.
Mhm.
And because I don't know if you have a different opinion on that, but I just feel like if you take that money and you put it into a magazine, um, you may not be able to maximize that as well
Yeah.
as if you were branded well.
Yes.
Does that make
Yeah, I see
sense?
what you're saying. It's kind of like there's the shiny new thing is always fun and exciting, but you need to make sure you're doing the basics. And the basics, especially in home services, are making sure you have a recognizable truck, a recognizable name, a recognizable face. Um, and if you're not doing those things, then you're just not going to be as sticky in the consumer's head. And so when you're paying for advertising, you're spinning your wheels a little bit. There are some ways to mitigate that, and I do. Not everybody who does. So Decided Excellence has magazines all over the country. There's a bunch of people that are like me that franchise and do stuff like that. But and not all of them are like 100% experts in marketing. They're not all like 100%. It's like a billboard. The billboard company isn't always going to be like, here's how you use a billboard well. So sometimes I just happen to have a marketing background in that way, and so I will sit down with I'll sit down with my clients and be like, all right, this is one of the better ways to use the magazine. This is a bad way to use it. Here's something you got to keep in mind. So there's ways to mitigate that, not having that brand identity. But I think you're right. Is like it could be that much more effort. 10 times more effort could be the result in a 100 times more, 100 times greater return. Sometimes there's huge discrepancies in effort like that. So I think you're right on the money. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I recently had we had talked about this. I had Dan Antonelli um on my podcast, and he has a book called Branded Not
Mhm.
Blanded, and he's all about talking about like, branding your company,
Yeah.
and powerful brands, and he uses the same terminology that are sticky,
Mhm.
that like stick in people's brains. And to his point, like he'll talk about, he calls it white van
Oh
syndrome.
yeah, I've heard
Like
of this.
if you pull up in a white van with like some lettering on it, that's not as sticky as pulling up and you've got your whole vehicle wrapped,
Mhm.
and you're like, and people are seeing that all the time. There's some one of have you heard of Mac 5, or have you
Oh
seen
yeah,
Mac
I've seen them
5
everywhere.
around driving around
Yeah,
town?
I can
Yeah, so
picture their yeah.
Dan actually designed their wraps and like hit their
That's cool.
brand and did all their branding for them. And it's like you instantly, like you're like, oh, like you see them
Mhm.
everywhere. You can't forget the little robot thing on the side of their trucks. And in his book, he actually shows some data where once he does the branding for a company, their organic Google search skyrockets.
Huge.
So
I'd
it's
imagine.
like
Yeah.
before having the branding, it'll be pretty like plateaued. And then out of nowhere, they get their, branding, all their wraps done. And I mean, it's
Yeah.
astronomical growth. And so, to what he kind of explains is like when you focus on your brand, the efforts that you're making for like marketing and advertising end up having a better ROI, because now you're not having to work as hard to stick in those people's
Yes.
minds. So it's like, well, now that ad that you paid for to be in that magazine is bringing a higher return on investment, not necessarily because you just have the ad in the
Mhm.
magazine, but it's because you've branded yourself well. So people are just, it's like adding to that like compounding effect of your brand. I
Yeah.
don't know if that
No,
makes
it
sense,
absolutely
but
does. It reflects one of the principles of branding that I think, and a lot of I will say a lot of people, especially in home services, kind of bristle at the idea of branding. It sounds like something that's kind of uh it's just trendy, it's not going to stick around. It's just a word to describe like things, a thing that has been true forever. If you think about a brand like a cattle brand, it's something that, it's something that it causes a change in behavior, right, in someone. And so like it's a principle of branding that every single one of your customers, every single one of your potential customers has a picture of you in their brain if they've ever seen you. And so, they see your truck, they recognize it, and they go, "Oh, that's just one of those trucks that drives around." And so that's, I think a lot of home services suffer from the, "Oh, that's one of the trucks that drives around," as that's the brand. But what you want to be is like,
right.
you want to be in that Mac 5 space where someone sees you go, "Oh yeah, that's the home services company that I could call if I needed any of these five things." Like you want that kind of brand. And so if you're not controlling your brand, then someone else is. And if you're not controlling your brand, you have one, someone else is controlling your brand. And so you should do everything that you can. Sometimes those things are paid, sometimes they're not. Do everything you can to make sure that you are in control of your brand and not your customers, not your potential customers or your negative reviewers. That's another huge problem that people run into.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think for a lot of home service business owners, and I mean, I'm not going to rule myself out of
Mhm.
this. Like, it can be kind of like daunting and scary to try and build your brand because it's like you know wrapping vehicles isn't cheap.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Like the average but it's like it's silly because you wrestle with this like this mentality of I don't know if I should wrap it, it costs so much, but then on the other hand you're like, man, I why am I not doing this, because my brand is suffering by not doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's funny how it's kind of like a catch 22. But yeah, for myself that's really what I want to try to accomplish, and be like really hyper local in the beginning
Mhm.
too, because I think a mistake that people can make is like we have a service area from Brevard, like all of Brevard
Mhm.
County, right? So um I think that it would be a mistake on my part as the business owner to be like sprinkling little bits of my company all through Brevard County. I mean, Brevard County is a large county,
It's long.
so if I was doing
Yeah.
like yeah, long county stretches along like what I don't know. It's got to be like what 60 to 100 miles of
It's gotta
coastline.
be, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Um it's something like that. But anyway, so it's like it wouldn't make sense for me to put a little bit of stuff down in like Palm Bay, a little bit in Melbourne, and all that. So what I really want to focus on is maximizing everything that I possibly can in Titusville.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
so this is the community I live in. This is the community that our office is in, and so I want to be hyper local in the in my um what is the word that I just like my attempts to brand my
Yeah,
company,
it's part of the
so
it's part of the
putting
niche. It's just this hyper locality of it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think if you starting there, because this is another thing I was going to say earlier when we were talking about like the ad in the magazine. It's like I don't think you would tell a company who hasn't really worked on their branding and gotten some of those foundational things done. I don't think you would go to them and say like, "Hey, um, go." Let's say you're talking to a business owner in Titusville, and it's like, "Hey, um, go to let's just throw out another. Let's go to Rockledge, 30 miles away, and put a billboard up there."
Mhm. Yeah,
Like,
not at all.
it's like,
No.
why?
It wouldn't make
You
much
wouldn't.
sense.
It's
Yeah.
now if like that business had, let's say, 10 trucks in Rockledge, was on a bunch of like the bus stop benches or
Mhm.
whatnot, was involved in the community, maybe sponsoring sports teams, and the brand had some recognition, and then you put a big billboard up. Well, okay, now that billboard makes
Makes more
more
sense, yeah.
sense. Um, so anyway, I think for me, it's not a question of like if you should do print. It's a matter of like when, and making sure that you have the right foundations before doing it.
Yeah.
So like for home service business or owners who may be listening to this, that would be my advice. And I don't know if you would echo that, Patrick, but um I think getting some of those things like foundations in place would
Oh
be
yeah.
key to going into print
Most definitely.
with a strong.
I would also say that, it's sometimes, and this is like, I would hesitate, and I'm sure this surely isn't what we're saying, that like you have to have a fully wrapped fleet and everything perfect before you can even think about doing print marketing, because
Yeah, no,
it
sure.
does depend on the print. So like not all print is created equal. You mentioned, sponsoring a local sports team, right? Generally that comes with what, like a banner, so a print ad, at but a billboard on US 1 versus a banner at, little league field, it's a different kind of ad, and that it actually does help your branding, because I think I've mentioned this to you at BNI sometimes, like brand is a function of association over time. If you want to create a good association, make sure you have multiple of those associations over a long period of time. That'll make your brand go up. And so that's actually what we try to do with in print marketing in general, is not necessarily branding. With our magazines, with like little league stuff like that, there's an element of brand building to it. So sometimes I like when someone has a brand already, that's recognizable by the community. It's But sometimes it's a way we use the magazine as a way to kind of build that brand for them as well, at least a little bit, because we're associated with the churches. We're seen as someone that's community focused, trustworthy, and so those kinds of businesses that want that kind of brand, local, trustworthy, perhaps religious, they want a spot in the magazine. So there are things like that. I wouldn't go crazy and be like, ah, yes, every magazine is going to brand me as community focused, because not every single one of them will. Um, I'm not,
Yeah, no, that's
far be
good.
it for me to be marked as pro magazine in general. That's not necessarily me. Um, I'm pro strategies,
Yeah.
certain strategies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like what you're saying, and it makes total sense. But yeah, like just it's I think that as long as you have the right approach to it, then it's effective.
Hmm.
But if you go into something that, like to your point, this magazine is very community
Hmm.
driven. So it's like if you go into this magazine, but you haven't even built any community, you haven't gotten involved in the
Yeah,
community,
and you don't plan to.
you're not
Yeah,
meeting people,
and you
huh?
don't plan to. It's.
Yeah, then it's like, well, it's not going to resonate, I don't
Hmm.
think. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're missing that opportunity. So I think it makes more sense if, okay, I'm going to do this magazine thing, but maybe the local church has a food bank.
Hmm.
I'm going to go and serve at the local food bank. So now you're it's like you're giving um that ad that you have in that magazine
Hmm.
validity and power. It's you're okay, you're there, people see the ad, right? But now not only did they see the ad, but they see you show up in the community. And now it's like, oh, I need a painter. Oh, I saw them in this magazine. Oh, I'm going to call them from
Yeah.
this. So I think it's just making sure that you have a strategy, right? I think that it would be silly to go into it and just throw money at something and then hope it works,
Yeah.
but not have a plan of
Definitely.
like how you're going to ensure its success.
Yeah, and I
So,
think I think what's true with
um,
all of these things is like we vastly underestimate the amount of time and effort it takes to see if something works. Like you mentioned door hangers.
yeah, that's good.
We underestimate how many door hangers we need to put up and how many times we need to put them up before they get noticed, right? And same with, with being out in the community, how many times you need. I mean, if you've ever I know your background, you used to do sales. If you've ever done a sales job, like you remember every person you ever talked to because it was a really important interaction, but like everybody gets a million sales calls a day, and so they don't remember you at all. And so you got to hit them, you got to touch multiple points. And it's the same thing with your customer. We're all in sales, right? Everybody who owns a business. And so you got to touch your customer, you got to hit your customer multiple times in multiple different ways. And the hard thing about advertising is you don't exactly know when. But like whatever effort, whatever method for branding you choose, you got to make sure you stick with it because it'll see returns over time. I'll give a good example. Our statistics for our clients who renew, at 12 months we see about like a 50 to 60% renewal, which isn't amazing. It's not bad, but it's a 50 to 60% renew after a year. When we have our 36-month campaign clients, they renew at a rate of like 80%. So like people who do it for 3 years,
Mm.
they go, "Wow, this was so worth it." People who do it for 12 months are like, "Eh, it was worth it, maybe not." But it's crazy to see that. You'd think if it would be worth it in 3 years, it'd be worth it in one. That's not always the case.
Yeah, no, it's so good. It's funny. I did another podcast interview this morning with the lovely and talented Greg
Yes.
Guido, uh, financial expert. And but anyway, we were talking about in that interview. We talked about consistency,
Mhm.
right, and how um, you can't always go into something um, and expect immediate results because sometimes the results don't come until a compounded amount of time. So for we used the gym as an example, or doing any type of like physical activity. It's like, well, if you start going to the gym and you expect results in a week, it's like, well, you're probably going to quit
Yeah.
if that's your
Your result is
expectation,
you'll feel
right?
sore.
But if you go,
Your
huh?
result will be soreness. You'll definitely get a result.
Yeah, yeah, you'll be sore and bitter and wondering why you did it. Um, but if you stick with that um, and you do it over time, the results will come. And that can be challenging. But what do you base that off of? Like,
Mm,
when the reality is when people go to the gym, they will see results. It's not a matter of like if, it's just a matter of
mhm.
consistency and showing up and putting in the work and day after day after day and putting in those hours, and it will pay off. Now, who knows, that might look like 6 months for some people, that might look like a year for others. But the reality is like those results will come, but you have to stay consistent, and like you can't base every decision that you make, and especially in business, um, off of like instant
Yeah.
gratification. Sometimes you have to be able to sit back, and that if you reach out to a marketing agency, most of them are going to say like, hey, you have to do a 6-month contract. It's like, well, because you can't pay for, like, let's talk about like SEO. It's, you can't invest money into SEO and expect it to start working tomorrow. It's like
Yes.
it takes time. So most of those marketing agencies are going to say, "Hey, we need you to like stick this out for at least six
Mhm.
months to be able to see results start to happen." And yeah, that's like when you're a small business owner, and your money is not like exactly just absolutely overflowing and abundant.
Who
You have
among
to
us,
be very strategic and huh.
Who among us is actually in that position? If only. That'd be a great problem to have. My marketing budget is too
Right.
big. I have too much money in marketing. It's not something I've ever
Yeah, that
heard.
would be amazing. Yeah. But it's like I think we get ourselves in hard places because we it's like we know that we need to do these things because they work,
Yeah.
right? Like um but we hesitate because maybe just like a scarcity
Mhm.
mindset, or afraid that it's not going to pay off. But you talked about door hangers. Like it's the same thing. There, like you have to do that over and over and over and over again, and And I don't even kind of like what we were talking about earlier. The call, you might not even be able to track the success per se to like that door hanger because, you know, it was, I don't know if there's like a marketing terminology of like, it's like secondhand um, marketing. It's like you put the door hanger out, but they actually called through your Google business
Oh,
page.
sure. Yeah, I
And
don't know if
it's
there's specifically a marketing term for that, but I know what you mean. The phenomenon is well trodden.
Yeah, it's like you're not going to know for sure, but then that same person could be like, "Oh, door hangers isn't working," and then they stop doing door hangers, and then next thing you know, they're like, "Why am I not getting any more calls to my through my GMB?" It's like, well, you stopped doing the thing that
Yes.
people were recognizing. You stopped putting out the door hangers. You stopped putting out yard signs. You stopped doing these little things that actually make an impact on
Hmm.
that call volume or lead volume. And it's like, okay, well, it's principle. Um, if you're putting your name out there enough and getting it in front of enough people, they're going to notice you.
Yeah.
So,
I
um,
think with brand
but anyway,
tools, I
yeah.
think with tools of branding, the best way to look at it is not as a transaction. I think I've said this to you before, but like a brand is not a savings account, it's a retirement account. It's like on the short term, you might not see the return. Like your principal is and return are not going to be equal. At a certain point, they are going to be equal, and it's going to be awesome. And then it's just going to explode after that. But you can't get to the explosion without the years of waiting. And it is tough when you're confronted with a choice of like, oh, this is not a very well forged path. It's helpful if there's I'm sure I'm sure you're doing door hangers because someone who's done them before has told you how they work and the best practices for them. So you're like, oh well, if I do what this guy did, then it's likely that I'm going to get the results that he got. That's one way to mitigate the risk. I think is like look at what other people have done. But even then, it's still risky because you're like, what if it doesn't work out? And at that point, you just gotta either do it or not or don't. No is always a good choice. It is a choice. But you got to make a choice. It's okay if the choice is no.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, like something that I try to do is I try to look at businesses that are where I want to be,
Hmm.
and businesses that are where I want to be are doing all of these things that we're talking about. So maybe it's a question of resources, like to get it all
Yeah.
implemented, but it's working towards that, right? So I don't think it's a question of whether you should do it or not. I think it's foolish for some business owners who maybe are smaller in size to, um, look at a bigger company who's like, let's say, worth 50 million, or they're doing 50 million in revenue, or more, 100 million,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and look at them and say, oh, it doesn't take all that, like that doesn't work. It's like, look at where you are, look at
Yes.
they've done something that works. There's a reason they're doing this. And that's kind of how I think about my business. It's like if somebody reached out to me who was a smaller business than I am and was like, "Oh, it doesn't take all that. That doesn't work." I'd be like, "Okay, you keep
Yeah.
believing what you want to believe,
The
but
good thing about
if you want
business
to get to."
The good thing about business is that there is a neutral indicator of who is beating who, and it's just dollar amount of it's like and it's like and it's and it not, that's not to be like it's a game and it's winning, but it's like there's a clear indicator that something works, and that's if someone's making money doing it. And you can like then have a qualitative analysis and be instead of quantitative and be like, well, what they're doing is immoral, and that's a different conversation. You know, there might be
Yeah.
sure does doing I'm going to get all of my customers hooked on crack, and then they're all going to come to me. That is an immoral business practice, but it works. Sorry, perhaps that was not the right. This is not the right podcast to make that joke. But but it's like yeah, there's a neutral indicator of like they're doing better, so they must be doing better than me. And so it takes a lot of humility in business to be like, all right, well then I should probably do the things that they do, or be okay with where I'm at. And that's also okay. It's okay to not everyone can be, I don't know, what's a gigantic home services conglomerate? Not everyone can be that, you know? Sometimes we do
Yeah.
need mom and pop roofer, and that's a good business to have, you know? But yes, the that doesn't work
Yeah, yeah,
mindset
for sure.
is very, it's fatalist. You know, it's not productive. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a really good point too, is like deciding where you want to be at.
Hmm.
But like to the point is, this whole my podcast is about helping home service business owners who are in the field
Hmm.
working, doing the work for themselves. They're on a truck, they're working with their guys out in the field, help them get to a place where they're working on their business and not in
Yeah.
it. Well, there's things that you have to do. You're not going to be able to build a sustainable business that keeps multiple crews employed and keeps enough business coming in the door doing the things that you did at this place, that you need to do here.
Yeah.
So
It's a different, yeah.
that's yeah. And then to your point, like, you have to decide, like, okay, do I want this, and am I willing to do what it takes to have that? If not, then okay, well then, like, to your point, just be happy with where you are. But if you're not happy with where you are, you have to realize that you're going to have to change some
Yeah.
things. You're going to have to, home services. One of the biggest things that we see and hear is, guys or girls who are doing the work themselves. These craftsmen, they will say, like, nobody can do it better than me. I'm the only one that can do it. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done. It's not going to get done right. And that's like, okay, if you want to think that way, and if you want to be the one that the business revolves around, then okay, keep believing that, but if you want to get off the truck or get off the ladder, you have to realize that there's people out there that are talented, that are professional and can do exactly what you're doing, if not better. And then you have to do the things that we're talking about
Yeah.
with growing your business to be able to sustain that, and grow. So, um, my mindset is like, I want to grow.
Hmm.
If my so, sometimes I ask myself, I was listening to his name's Jesse. I'm trying to think of what his last name is. I think it's Itzler.
Okay.
His wife is the founder of Spanx
Okay.
for
Yeah.
women. Have you heard of him?
I've not heard of him. No.
Okay, well, Jesse Itzler, I saw him on like this. I don't know if it was like a short of like a long form podcast or something. But what he said in this, it was like he was talking to somebody, and he was like, "Well, why do you want that? Why do you want to grow your business from 5 million to 20 million? Like, there's going to be more headache. There's going to be, bigger problems. Like, you're doing great at 5 million. Why do you really want this? And do you really want
Hmm.
it?" And so I think that's a hard question that we have to ask ourselves. And I think sometimes we may not know it, but like, we want that, we want to strive for it, and then what happens when we get there and we're like, oh wow, I didn't really want this.
Yeah.
um but I'm kind of in the place where, like, I want to push, and push myself and push the business to grow. Like, I tell, like, if I were to journal, like, what my dreams are and hopes for this company is to, like, make it a national brand,
Hmm.
and have like Seal Pro painting all over the nation. That's like the big dream. But um, man, there's a lot that you have to do to make that happen.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of things that you have to do differently. So, um, but anyway, all that to say is, like, if you're listening to this and you are in that place where you want to get off the ladder, you want to grow a brand, something that has legacy in your community, then you have to do some of these things that we're talking about. And, I think the decision to do some of those things is hard.
Super. Yes, it is. It is difficult. I talk to roughly a dozen business owners a week that are in that exact predicament of like, do I make this jump or not? It's tough, but it's a decision you got to make.
Yeah, and it's, to your point, there it like clearly works. That's the funny
Yeah.
thing, is it clearly
Yes.
works because people are doing it, and they're to your, the point you made earlier. It's like after that 3 year mark, people, are signing back up, and at 80% retention rate, you said,
Yes. Hmm.
roughly. Yeah, so like 80% retention rate after 3 years. It's like, hello, if it wasn't working, why would people just, I mean, unless they're just really dumb people,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Unless they're just like,
I doubt that's the
unless they just
case.
kind of forgot, it's, oh, I forgot that I was paying this thing. It's like, no.
Right, or how do you spend that money and just, if it's not working, and just keep doing it? Oh, this hurts so bad.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
it's not
it
working,
doesn't
and like
happen like
keep
that. No.
forking out the money. No, it wouldn't. If something wasn't working, any person with like some common sense would be like, okay, it's not
Mhm.
working. But yeah, so I think that it's interesting. Like, I'm sure there's like some psychology behind that, on um, you know, making the decision to move forward with something like print marketing. But um, good stuff. So, as far as the magazine goes, let's kind of jump into exactly what Decided Excellence Catholic Media
Mhm.
is, exactly what you guys offer, where you guys are, where your magazines are at, what kind of demographic are you guys targeting and
Sure.
exposing your, I don't know if you call them users or
Readers.
um,
Yeah. Readers.
readers. Well, exposing, so your readers, but the people who are paying for
Oh,
the ads,
sponsors.
so
Sponsors. Excuse me. Yes.
your sponsors. Okay, so like, what demographic are your
Hmm.
sponsors getting exposed to, and kind of like what the strategy there is with the magazine, and where maybe giving the listeners, I'm kind of giving you like a mouthful here of what to go
Sure.
over, but and just maybe the markets that you guys can be found in.
Yeah, so basically the way that Decided Excellence works is we'll partner with local Catholic churches, and most Catholic churches run off of a bulletin, which is dropped off at the parish, and they hand it out every Sunday. We work with them to build a parish magazine that's just about their parish, and we send it out to every Catholic in their area, whether that person goes to mass or not. So the value add for the parish is it increases mass attendance at their church. The value add for the readers, they get a free magazine that has stuff about the local area, has stuff about local Catholics, the local church, and some faith based articles as well. And then the added benefit to the sponsor is that they get that FaceTime with the audience. Now, what we found is that our magazines are read at about 94%, because they're so targeted to just Catholics in this area. And so we hyper focus our niche so that people are more likely to open the magazine. Um, in terms of offerings in the magazine, we have, standard ads, like you get a percentage of the page. There's one back page, there's one inside front cover, all that good stuff. We also have feature businesses we call the professional spotlight, where you can actually write articles in the magazine as well. So that is the premium edition, premium offering that I think more people should take advantage of personally, because it's that it adds reciprocity. People are able to custom address their audience and encourage people towards certain offerings of theirs. That's particularly important in insurance and in finance. Maybe not necessarily home services. It's pretty simple. We will paint your house. Not much of an article there. Just one big article. We will paint your house. Um, when it comes to where we're found, we have magazines nationwide, about 120 markets or so, I think. And so the best way to see if there's a Decided Excellence magazine in your area would be to go to our website, decidedexcellence.com. There's a little tab up on the top that says promote your brand. You can also just go to decidedexcellence.com/promote dash your dash brand. If you would mind putting that in the notes, that'd be nice. Brandon. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
yeah, for sure.
You can go there, and then you can reach out to someone, and they'll see if there's a magazine in your area. And you can meet with the publisher out there in that area, and they can have a conversation with you. It never hurts to have that conversation, because you can see what the pricing looks like in your area, it's different everywhere, and whether or not that makes sense for building your brand in your market. So decidedexcellence.com.
Yeah,
That
that's
I'll say that one more time. Marketing. Support.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, just maybe send me over an email with
Mhm.
any resources that you want me to put into the show
Sure.
notes, like a link or anything else like that. If you want me to put anything where people can reach out to you directly, if they're maybe we have some listeners that are local and may want to reach out
Absolutely.
for more information, um, we could get them in there. Um, Now, as far as the what was the question I was going to ask? It just slipped my brain. So if I think of it, I'll ask you. But that that's really good. I think that people should reach out if you're listening to this. At least get more information. Find out if they're in your market. Oh, I remember my question. If you if somebody is interested in the magazine, I'm sure some people might ask, like, do I have to be a part of that parish? Do I have to be Catholic? Do I have to be a person of faith,
Mhm.
or can any business be in
Oh,
here?
good question. Yeah, any business can be in the magazine, with the caveat that we prefer businesses that are local. So ideally, like someone that we will take national businesses, but we try to keep things local because that's the brand of the magazine, right? And so, any non-Catholic
Yeah,
business is welcome in. In fact, our there's really no expectation for our readers that the person is Catholic, and a lot of non-Catholic I have a lot of non-Catholic businesses in the magazines that I run that see great results because they're like, people are like, oh wow, that's so nice, you sponsor the thing and you're not even Catholic. Sometimes the Catholics like, well, of course you sponsor this, you're Catholic, but the non-Catholics like, oh wow, that's so cool, thanks. So that's so yeah, all are welcome
yeah.
in this place, as the song goes, if you're familiar with it. um,
That's good. Now, so obviously we've went over everything there. People can find out more information about Decided Excellence and the opportunities there. We've talked all about the marketing. Now, as we bring this to a close, let's talk a little bit about. So you have your own
mhm,
podcast as well. So like mutually, we both have
both
podcasts.
podcasters.
How's the we briefly talked about this in the beginning, just like how's your podcast going? I'm interested to know, like, how's your community with
Mhm.
it, like how many people are you guys reaching?
Yeah.
um how's that working out for you
Yeah,
guys?
so the podcast is almost the exact opposite of the magazine. So the magazine is hyper local, except it is still Catholic. So it's hyper low. The magazine's hyper local, focused on businesses that are in the area. The podcast is national, and it is mostly social media. So it's all digital. I don't think we have T-shirts, man. Like we don't have anything in print. And so it's just kind of funny, those two sides. The podcast is going really well. We started it when we were in college. It's a comedy podcast for Catholic young adults. It's called The Crunch. It's a topic driven podcast where we talk about some aspect of Catholic life that's going on in my co host's life. And then we mostly make jokes. It's mostly about the jokes. And yeah, that's primarily marketed through Instagram. We have an Instagram page at the Crunchcast. Yeah, but it's primarily for Catholics 18 to 35, because that's a there's a real big hole in the market for Catholics from 18 to 35. By the way, if you want to go into business, that's a niche that's not being exploited enough. Um, we're the only Catholic podcast in that space uh, that's above a certain threshold, obviously. But yeah, so that's another that's another side entirely. We can have another podcast about social media marketing. I have a lot of opinions about that, as I'm sure you've heard me talk about at BNI.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious. So you guys are doing pretty much everything's been organic. You guys are pretty much just putting
Yeah.
out, regular
Hmm.
content consistently, and just have been able to naturally and organically grow that audience base and
Yes, we
community.
do 100% organic growth through social media. So we tried paying, we tried doing social media advertising boosting and stuff, and we actually found out it wasn't what we were trying to do. It wasn't worth it at the time. It probably will be in the future. But the yeah, all of our audiences interact with us through Discords. We have a big Discord server, and we do a lot of our selling through email and through Instagram direct automation, DM automation, which is a fun little tactic that I love. If you do social media marketing, check out ManyChat. It's like email marketing for your Instagram DMs. I know but it's probably a very small margin of. Oh, there's a contingent of home services people on Instagram. There's that guy that cuts lawns for free, right? I know that guy.
I use
You
ManyChat.
use many? Nice. There we go. Look at that.
Yeah, no, I use it. So I was gonna say, like, for my listeners, let me just give this little caveat. Like, um, if you're listening to this and you've heard me talk about Jobber, if you've heard me talk about Nice Job, which Jobber is a CRM, Nice Job is for getting your reviews and like automating that process. You've probably heard me talk about CallRail, Gusto. Is my payroll provider. CallRail is like call tracking numbers and tracking your marketing efforts. With all of those different things, like I do get paid. So if at any time you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, I want to try that out, or I'm interested in one of these different products, softwares for your home service business, please use my affiliate links in the show notes. Because I do get credit for those. So I do appreciate the support there. That is, helps to support the show and all of those things. But, that's how we've really been able to monetize our social media efforts through brand partners. And so now I get, paid commissions through my different brand partners. And, so earlier before the show, I was mentioning like that would be like some ideas that I would have for the podcast is like, can you think of creative partnerships
Sure, yeah.
that you could come up with to support the podcast?
That's right. We were talking about
and it's kind of like
before,
yeah, monetization. So, yeah, so it's like a lot. I talk to a lot of people about podcasts and or just social media in general, and a lot of people ask me. Like, I had this one kid. I was sharing my opinion on somebody else's social media post, and they're like, "Who do you think you are? You only have 2,000 something followers." And I was like, "Oh, they asked me why I was verified."
Oh, sure.
They're like, because I shared my opinion on somebody's post, and they're like, who are you to share your opinion? You only have X amount of followers, and you shouldn't even be verified. And I commented back to him, and I said, "Oh, that's funny." I was like, "Do you make money from your social media?" And they were like, "No." And I was like, "Well, I do." So part of being verified is like verifying my identity, like giving me that verification for like the brand partners that I work with, and getting paid, and making sure that when people, like, if they go through any of my affiliate links, or if they listen to the podcast and they go and find me on social media to like use my links there or something, that it's me and I'm getting the credit for it. Because anybody could go onto like social media and steal my links and make a fake profile, and now I'm losing money. So
no, that's why.
But anyway,
I should probably do that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny. Like, you don't even have to have a. I've heard this a lot, even more recent, that how many followers you have is not as important as building community.
Yeah.
So it's community re-engagement, and really being able to capitalize on like people who are there, is really where the secret sauce is with that.
You want emails?
Community.
You want emails? You can buy emails. All right. There's some Russians who will sell them to you, I'm sure, somewhere on the dark web. But if you want an audience, you can't buy an audience, man. You gotta build that. It's tough.
Yeah. It's definitely hard, but then it's like, well, once you have that, now coming up with those different ways to re-engage them, how to create community, how to create conversations with them, and um, and then it's like, okay, well, now I can create a product or
Mhm.
something to offer to them,
I need a partnership.
and you've built
I need a
value.
partnership with a good. We're all. It's all my audience is 18 to 35-year-old young adult Catholics. I need to like partner with like a dating app or something. Like a Catholic dating app. They're all looking for a Catholic husband or wife. I gotta find.
No,
That's what I gotta find.
seriously.
I'm serious. If you guys know any, um, we gotta partner with them.
No, I mean that's brilliant. You could have like I mean I know they have like Christian Mingle, but I don't know if that's
They
like
got Catholic match.
Catholic,
They
but
got yeah
yeah.
Catholic singles.
But if they had something like that, yeah, it's just like thinking of like, okay, well, how would my audience benefit from this partnership, and how can I, benefit too by presenting it to them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is kind of how I thought about everything that I do. I'm like, okay, well, what brands have brought me value, and how can I in turn around and give that value to
Exactly.
the people who follow me or find value in what I'm sharing, and then me also get
Hmm.
have some kind of incentive for connecting the two.
Definitely.
And so that's happened. And it's like it's at scale. I had we've talked about this before. I had a friend of mine who I was on a podcast with in Nashville, and we both are we're both brand partners. We had never met before, but this brand brought us together, a bunch of different brand partners together in Nashville to be on a podcast together, and different topics and stuff that we covered. And so I was at dinner with him, and he began to just like share with me. We're on like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Sure.
Like he's further along in his like podcasting and social media journey, but man, he makes like crazy money doing
Yeah.
it. Like some of his sponsors and brand partnerships, I mean, he's making like people's salaries from like 4 podcasts. Like, come on, somebody, give me like let me get on 4 episodes of a podcast and make somebody's salary. Like, but that's what he has been able to accomplish. And so there's definitely a lot of possibility there.
Upside,
and
there's a lot of missed opportunities.
So I know I'm like I'm at the bottom end of that spectrum right now, but like my hope and my passion and dream is to get up there.
It's a good ambition. Helping other people. That's why I like helping other business owners get off the ladder. It's a tangible, like, have an asset instead of just a job. It's so good. You could help generations of people. It's a great thing.
One of my favorite episodes, it was just a few back. His name's Isaac Muma. And I actually probably said his last name wrong. I'm great with last names. But anyway, Isaac, he reached out to me like, I don't know, just before I asked him to come on the podcast, and he sent me a text, and he's like, I'm off the ladder. He's like, I'm finally off the ladder. And I was like, I got so ecstatic, because it was like the first person that I had been talking to about it, had like encouraged and had gone back and forth with. And I was just so stoked for him. And there's so many people that like aspire to that and never take that leap. They never make things happen. And Isaac, like, he put in the hard work. He made the hard decisions. He made the sacrifices, and he made it happen, and he got off the ladder.
So good.
And it's really cool when you like everything that you talk about actually ends up helping somebody, accomplish what you're talking about. So, it's super cool. So that's definitely a lot of fun. But anyway, we are, I want to be respectful of your time, Patrick. I'm going to bring this to a close. I thank you for your time and just being willing to jump on here and chat with my audience about all things marketing and advertising, branding, all that good stuff. And, I look forward to continuing to grow our relationship through BNI. And when not an if, but a when I'm ready, I'll
when you're
be
ready.
definitely looking at getting into the magazine. And I know that you talked about bringing something here locally to my town because
To Titusville,
Titusville.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I don't know if that's already in the works or
We
being
had a
talked
magazine
about.
that was 80. I
But
actually got the stats on it. It was 80% to print, and the person who was running it quit. This was a couple years ago, and it just hasn't.
oh,
Yeah, so we haven't gotten it because there's been no full time person on that magazine in a while, and so it's languishing.
okay,
But we could get it back. Who knows? We
gotcha.
could someone could come
All
out of the
right.
woodwork.
Well, if it comes back, Titusville would definitely be my first pick. So,
Fantastic.
but anyway, yeah, thank you so much. And it was great. I hope that if you were listening to this, I hope you got value from it and learned something, came up with a new strategy for your business and how you're going to tackle your marketing and branding with your business to help you get off the ladder as a home service business owner. If you're listening on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, like this video, turn on the little notifications, leave a comment, let me know what you think, share it with somebody so that they can learn from this content as well. And also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I'd really appreciate it if you would rate and review the show. That would help me out a lot to get the show out to more people. And then lastly, as I mentioned in the show, I have my affiliate links down below if you're interested in trying out any of those softwares. You can also now send me a message personally. You'll see it in the show notes. Send me a message and we can chat. Also, you can subscribe. There's a subscription, so you can support the show for as little as $3 a month, and that'll just help to make the show better, help to bring better content, and serve the listeners of this show and help you get off the ladder. So, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Off the Ladder podcast.